guys remember Professor Allan Lichtman? He's the professor that predicts who is going to win presidential election. And apparently he has never been wrong. I told you I didn't agree with his keys this time around, and I'm going to dive into that and show you where I disagreed. Well, Allan Lichtman apparently, I guess, was not doing any interviews after he was wrong for 2024. The day after the election, he decided he was not going to do any interviews. He wanted to, I guess, take time and figure out where he went wrong. But now he is doing interviews, and it seems though he's had time to sit down and figure out where he went wrong, but I still disagree with him. So 2 appearances here. The first one is on CNN. The second one is on News Nation. Let's get into the CNN one, because I still don't agree with his assessment. And you guys can tell me what you think. Let's get into it.
He's been called the Nostradamus of elections. He's correctly predicted 9 of the last 10. That is until the early hours of Wednesday morning, when CNN predicted Donald Trump would win the presidency. I'm talking about Professor Allan Lichtman. He says his 13 keys are how he makes his predictions for the White House. Here's the moment he realized his prediction was wrong.
This is funny.
I'm starting to get a little nervous.
Yeah.
She needs to make up 170,000 votes.
I don't see it. The big Democratic counties are mostly in.
No, yeah. Shit.
I just don't see it. Good thing I have nothing to do tomorrow.
Yeah, I took off work tomorrow.
And I'm not doing any interviews.
Good.
I'm done with that.
So what happens to the keys now? Well, Professor Allan Lichtman is here with us tonight to tell us what he thinks went wrong. Professor, thank you for joining us tonight. I mean, we've talked many times. Were the keys wrong, or was your interpretation off this time?
I think the fundamental problem was the keys, not my interpretation. No one's convinced me that was wrong. There are unique features. I've always said, some unique features could break the patterns of history, and I think that's happened here. First of all, a unique feature specific to this election. And you've heard me say this before. I was very critical of the Democrats for openly and viciously trashing their sitting president right out in public. I have never seen that before, and I've studied politics since the founding. And we saw Biden's approval rating plummet as they were doing that. I think that extended beyond Biden to weaken any Democratic candidates, since they're discrediting their own administration. Secondly, it rendered problematic one of my keys, the contest key, since we couldn't have a primary, but the Democrats did unite around Harris, and I turned the key in their favor, but we had never seen anything like that before, and that was problematic. But
pause. See, this is where I disagree with him. This is one example, the primary issue. See, he keeps saying we didn't have a primary, we couldn't have a primary, but he leaves out that people did run against Joe Biden in the Democrat primary. He leaves out that a candidate like Dean Phillips was able to get 22,000 votes in New Hampshire. He leaves out that Marianne Williamson dropped out of the race and then re-entered the race because she was getting thousands of votes as well. So even though there wasn't an actual debate, et cetera, and those candidates weren't acknowledged the way they should have been by corporate media, those candidates did get votes. And they got votes not just in places like New Hampshire, but also in some of those swing states. Dean Phillips, for example, is from Minnesota. So he's from the Midwest. You don't think that he had fans out there who did, you know what I mean? So this is the part where I disagree. And maybe he doesn't see it the way that I do, but to sit here and to pretend like those 22,000 people that voted for Dean Phillips in New Hampshire, or those thousands of people that voted for Marianne Williamson, or the thousands of people that voted for, who was the other one? Well, RFK had left and he went to the independent at that point. And then Chink, I guess, really doesn't count. So we'll stick with those two. To pretend like there was no, and then RFK Jr., remember, he was running as a Democrat first. He was polling at one point at 19% as a Democrat candidate. So even though he wasn't on the ballot for Democrat primaries, he still gave people another option. So to pretend like those people didn't have any effect in any way, shape, or form, I just don't believe that. Let's continue.
More importantly, are trends that are long-term and affect the long-term future of our democracy and the keys, because the keys depend upon a rational, pragmatic electorate deciding based on governance whether the incumbent party should get 4 more years. And we've seen the explosion of some trends that have existed before, but not to this extent. Disinformation. You know, Elon Musk is, I don't know how many hundreds of billions he has. He has been the director of misinformation. 2 billion views of his spreading of disinformation, not just about the economy, but about immigrants, about minorities. We've never seen disinformation at this scale. Next, we have never seen to this scale the agitation of 3 trends that have been very deeply embedded in American history: misogyny, racism, and xenophobia. You know, the first anti-immigrant law was 1798, and Donald Trump wants to revive it. You know, first.
Stop. I'm sorry. See, it just, okay. The first part there. So one of the things that he's claiming is, well, my keys didn't adjust for disinformation. And he's blaming Elon Musk, blaming Twitter, right? He said, oh, there was all this disinformation out there and it didn't adjust for that or whatever. First of all, define disinformation. Is disinformation something that you just don't agree with, or is disinformation independent media? We always got to ask this question, right? That isn't to say that everything on Twitter is true, but let's be real, okay? All right, everybody who voted isn't on Twitter. And if we think about most of the people who do vote that are over the age of 65, a lot of them are not on Twitter. So when you talk about disinformation on Twitter, the majority of people who vote are not on Twitter. So I don't know. You know, I invited Professor Allan Lichtman on my show, by the way. I invited him on. He didn't respond. I invited him on because I wanted to explain this to him in person. I can understand if the majority of voters are on Twitter, but the majority of them are not. The majority of the demographic that heavily is consistent with voting, the majority of those people are not on Twitter. So I don't understand what you mean about Elon Musk and all this jazz. So let's just put that to the side. Now, the other thing, he brings in racism, misogyny, and xenophobia. Those things have always existed in this country, fam. This is a new thing. Why are people pretending like this just became a thing in 2024 because Kamala Harris lost? That is not a new thing. That existed when Barack Obama was running for president. People forget this. What are you talking about? You don't think there weren't people saying racist things about Barack Obama when he was running for president? There were. I remember. So stop. Misogyny. Well, there were some things were said about Hillary. So stop pretending like these things just became a thing in 2024 because Kamala lost. Jesus.
It was the French, then the Germans, then the Jews, then the Mexicans, then the Muslims. There's always another. And of course, you know, racism. We didn't even begin to dismantle Jim Crow until the 1960s, and it's still to some extent survived.
Stop. Barack Obama won twice. Stop it. Now it's all about we didn't dismantle Jim Crow. Yes, these things are true, but Barack Obama won twice. Not once, twice. And when he won the first time, he kicked John McCain's ass. Go look up the numbers. This is not to say there are no racist people. Yes, there are. And yes, some people would not vote for her because of her race, just like some didn't vote for Obama because of his. But that was not the majority, fam. Stop. Oh, my God. These academics, man.
Women didn't vote until 1920. So that calls into question the whole premise behind the keys and behind our democracy.
Well, if it calls into question the premise of the keys, what about the fact that the pollster Nate Silver says that he used your keys to predict a Trump win?
and so did I. And I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you how I used his keys and I got the exact opposite response. Listen to what he says.
Nate Silver has been criticizing the keys since he attacked me for my correct prediction early of Obama's reelection in 2011. He has a vested interest in going against the keys because they put him out of business. And look what he did this year. This is typical Nate Silver. He says Harris is marginally ahead. So the election is going to be, so close, 50-50. But it could go either way, with the swing states going one way to one candidate or the other. And he says, my gut favors Trump, but don't listen to my gut. So no matter what happens, Nate Silver can't be wrong and he can't be right because his predictions are meaningless.
Actually, Nate Silver basically walks the line, guys. Nate Silver walks the line. So that way he's like, you're not going to point at me at the end of all of this and say, I said that person couldn't win.
Admit I was wrong because I go out on a limb and tell you who's going to win or who's going to lose. And I don't try to squirm out of it. And as we're having this discussion, I'm very squarely trying to consider why I went wrong, what it means for the future of our keys and the future of our democracy.
Given the fact that you talk about some of the disinformation, which seems to be the trajectory of a lot of things dealing with the democracy, do you intend, Professor Allan Lichtman, to change your keys or adjust to an additional, maybe a 14th one to adjust for that factor?
I don't intend to change my keys on the fly. That's a recipe for disaster, particularly when these critiques come post hope. It's very easy to say what you should do when you know the answer already. Much more difficult to do it in advance. And the keys go all the way back to 1860 in development and back to 1984 predictively. So I'm not going to very quickly change the keys based upon some critique that comes after they know what happened. But I'm very seriously going to reconsider. And I'm also wondering, are we going to have a free and fair election in 2020?
Oh boy, here we go with free and fair. Honey, Connie said he doesn't admit he was wrong, though. He blames the keys. And you know what? That's a good point, Connie. Also, on News Nation, same thing. Same thing on News Nation, right? So watch this. I just can't. Can't. Oh my God.
Wins the election in 6 days.
That's right. It's possible, but a lot would have to go wrong for Harris to lose.
So it was possible and it happened. Why? And how does that change the reckoning of what the keys mean and how they should be applied? Professor of American History at American University, the father of the 13 keys, Allan Lichtman. Good to see you, Professor.
Always good to be with you, and I do have a pretty deep explanation.
Oh, I want to hear it. So I just want to say off the top, you're a friend of mine, and I don't like people coming after you, especially after the fact. It's like, one side was mad at you when you made the prediction. Now people are mad at you after the prediction. I'm sorry, but, I guess these days, perversely, it's a sign that you're relevant, Professor. I guess you can sell it to yourself that way, but boy, do people suck. What did you figure out about the analysis of the race?
Yes, as I said, things could go wrong. There could be unprecedented events that change the pattern of 160 years of history. That's what happened here. Two things. Number one, disinformation. We've always had disinformation, but disinformation has exploded to an unprecedented degree. You talked about a grievance election, but a lot of that grievance was driven by disinformation. Starts with Fox News and conservative media, conservative podcasters with tens of millions of views. But we've seen something brand new this time.
So did you notice what he did? He's making it sound like only Fox News is biased and pushes propaganda, and that MSNBC and CNN don't. Everybody see that? Okay.
The 300 billionaire Elon Musk putting his thumb on the scales through his control of X, formerly Twitter. It's been reported that his misinformation has had billions, literally billions of views. And this is spread to every aspect of this election. There is misinformation about everything about the economy, inflation, jobs, unemployment, the stock market, growth. There is.
Are you going to tell people that their own pockets and their own bank accounts is misinformation? Like they don't know what's in their bank account. They don't know what the grocery store prices are. Like, how is that misinformation? Like, people don't have to watch cable news to know how much the grocery prices are. The average working class American is not paying attention to the stock market. They're looking at the prices. They're looking at their bank account. They know when prices increase. How is that misinformation? You know, again, these academics, man.
Vast disinformation about undocumented immigrants, you know, that they're supposedly killers who are out to get you. In fact, studies by Cato and the National Institute of Justice show undocumented immigrants are the most law-abiding segment of our society, committed crimes and violent crimes, less than half that of native-born Americans. It's
the majority of voters in the swing states, though, their vote was not swayed about violent immigrants. The number one issue was the economy. The economy. Like, it just, I don't know. Like, what?
Spread to the hurricane relief, spreading lies that hurricane relief dollars were being diverted to migrants. It's lies about the Ukraine war, that somehow Ukraine was responsible for having one of the world's great powers invade a third or fourth rate power. And, you know,
No, you see, you guys, you see what I mean? He's a shit lib. That's what he is. Ukraine provoked Russia. So it almost seems like Allan Lichtman is using some of his own bias to determine whether or not the keys are going to work in such a way to produce the outcome that he wants. At least that's what's it sound like for 2024. I was shocked when he said Kamala Harris was going to win this and she was going to be the first. And, you know, I was kind of like, really? I didn't see that energy on the ground at all. And maybe if he wasn't paying attention to the keys and he was paying attention to what the voters were saying, particularly those that are working class, maybe he would have had a different prediction.
Scholars have shown once you dissolve truth, democracy dissolves along with it. The way authoritarianism takes hold, and is taking hold all over the world, not just here, is not through force, but through the manipulation of information. As George Orwell warned in 1984, you know, in that dictatorship, war is peace, famine is plenty. The other thing that's unique about this election is the explosion of elements that have always been present, the dark side of American history, but that have been agitated to an unprecedented degree in this election. And I'm talking about racism, misogyny, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, with a woman of color being a particular target. And these things cross ethnic and racial lines.
Notice he mentions anti-Semitism, but he doesn't mention Islamophobia. So again, he is, you know, Allan Lichtman, I think, lives in his own bubble. From what I was told, he didn't even create these keys. Also, someone shared this on Twitter that in his book, originally, these 13 keys predicted the popular vote. So I don't know, like, you know, it just seems kind of all over the place to me. But I am going to say this. Let's play 13 keys. Let's play the keys, because I'm going to show you what I came up with. Hopefully it's big enough for you here. Yeah, you guys see that? Okay. Here are the 13 keys, and I'm just going to go over the ones that I selected. Now, the way this works is I believe that if there's 5 keys that turn, then you're fine. But if there are more than 5 keys, then that means that the opposition will win. So if you're the incumbent and you have 4 keys that, you know, go in that direction, then based on the 13 keys, you're going to win again. You'll win re-election. but I picked out more than 5. And this is where I disagree with Allan Lichtman with this particular presidential election. Let's start with number 2. No primary contest. Now, this one I left up in the air and I made it green. The ones that I am calling out are yellow, but I want to tell you why I made this one green. There is no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. So if you notice in my notes here, I said under Biden, when he was the nominee, yes, there was Marianne, there was RFK, and there was Dean Phillips. They didn't have debates, but these people, RFK dropped out and ran independent, but Marianne and Dean Phillips did get votes in the primary races. So something that Allan Lichtman did that I don't know if everyone noticed, I noticed he did not make his prediction until after Kamala Harris was named the nominee. Coincidence? It just almost seemed kind of weird because he had an interview before then. And he was asked, are you ready to make your prediction? Who you think's going to win? And he said, I'm not ready to make it yet. That's when Biden was still the nominee. But once Biden dropped out and Kamala was the nominee, then he made his prediction. So it almost kind of makes me wonder, did he have inside information that Biden was going to be stepping aside? And is that why he didn't make that prediction then? Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. He's in DC. He teaches in DC. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Okay. Think about that for a second. Now, when Kamala enters the race, there is no primary contest at that point. But at the time, under Biden, there wasn't a debate, but they were on the ballot. So what that said to me is that there were people who still wanted either Marianne or Dean Phillips because they did receive votes. So think about that for a second. Okay. All right. Now, so I made this one green because I said, okay, well, I want to point out something about this, but maybe I won't change that one because the candidate changed. Let's go to number 3, incumbent seeking re-election. The incumbent party candidate is the sitting president. See, here's another one. No. Remember, this changed. So in the end, the incumbent party candidate was not the sitting president. It was Kamala Harris, the vice president. So I turned that key. Everybody see how this works? See, these are tricky because this election was different. So that was a tricky one. But I'm saying, yeah, this one is turning. Number 4, and he disagrees with this, no third party. So first of all, the way that this is worded, it doesn't fit the definition. It says no third party, but then it says there is no significant third party or independent campaign. Well, to that, I push back on Al and I say, define significant. What do you mean by significant? That can change. So I am turning that key, and I want to tell you why. It's not like it was just one person in particular. You had Jill Stein, you have RFK, and you had Cornel West. All of them were running at the same time. And even though RFK Jr. suspended his campaign, he still was on the ballot in the swing states, and he received over 700,000 votes. Allan Lichtman was given multiple opportunities during interviews to change his prediction. And he said, no, I do not change my prediction. I keep the prediction the same. If I was him, considering that RFK Jr. was not being removed from the swing states, I would have changed that prediction. So there's that. This is just how I would view it. Because like I said, no third party. But then when you look at the definition, significant, define significant. You had 3 well-known people running. So think about that. The next one that I turned was number 6, strong long-term economy. Real per capita economic growth during the term equals or exceeds means growth during the previous 2 terms. So if I were Allan Lichtman, I would revise this. because the number one issue was the economy. Most voters said that was the number one issue. So I would change that definition, but to that definition, I said growth not exceeded. Whoops. Where am I? Here we go. Growth not exceeded. Biggest complaint was Biden economy compared to Trump economy. I turned that key. How many keys have we turned? 3. Okay, let's keep it moving. I disagree with him on this one. Number 8. He said that there was no social unrest during his first interview with Chris Cuomo. Highly disagree. Social unrest. There is no sustained social unrest during the term. I said the Gaza protest was social unrest. He disagrees with that. He said it to Chris Cuomo. He said the Gaza protests do not count as social unrest. People were protesting for over a year. Students were camping out across the country. I'm not just talking about the campus protests. I'm talking about the marches in DC. I'm talking about the marches around the world. People are still protesting for Gaza. You just don't hear about it as much because mainstream media stopped covering it. But he said on News Nation that the Gaza protests did not count towards social unrest. I heavily disagree with that. The youth vote was heavily affected by Gaza. The numbers show that. The polls show that. The exit polls show that. He was incorrect there. Moving on. Number 10, I turned this key. No foreign or military failure. The incumbent administration suffers no major failure in foreign or military affairs. Again, define major. What do you mean by major? So this is what I selected. Weapons and funding to Israel and Ukraine. Now, why do I say Ukraine? Ukraine is losing. They've been losing. Zelensky comes into DC and walks out with a blank check. We keep giving them money and giving them weapons, but they are losing. So I said Ukraine. The second one is the weapons and the funding to Israel. Israel, in a way, is already lost. Yeah, they have destroyed Gaza, but considering what Israel has done to Gaza, to the West Bank, and also to Lebanon, the world's perception, the military view of Israel has lost tremendous support. So I do not consider that to be a success for the Biden-Harris administration. I don't. So I turned that key. We can differ on these. You know, you may not agree with me on some of these, but this is just how I see it. And this one, I also think it should be worded differently, but I'm going to tell you why I turned this one. 13, uncharismatic challenger. The challenging party candidate is not charismatic or a national hero. Here's the thing. I don't even know if charismatic is necessarily the right word to go with. I put Trump was more chill. I just more chill, because you can be charismatic but not be likable. You can try to be charismatic but not be chill. And what we noticed from Donald Trump is that he is able to talk to anybody, any place, anytime. We see Donald Trump going to UFC fights. He sat down with The Undertaker. And I don't know if everybody's into wrestling, but Donald Trump, he was with The Undertaker from WWE. Stuff like that. So, you know, he calls it charismatic. I'm like, I call it chill. Maybe he should change that to likability factor, because even though people are like, the media would have you think that all these people hate Donald Trump has a likability factor, and Kamala Harris was the underdog with this. And people didn't believe me when I said this. She was the underdog. She wasn't likable, especially when she stood there and she said, I'm speaking. If you want Trump, keep it up. Otherwise, I'm speaking. People see Donald Trump going to Joe Rogan and laugh it up with Joe Rogan. People see Donald Trump at the barbershop laughing it up with people. Remember, Donald Trump used to be in rappers' music videos. So even though you may not agree with Trump's previous presidential term and the way he handled things during this particular campaign, Donald Trump had a likability factor. So I turned this one because at the end of the day, he was kind of seen as a martyr. And I said this over and over again. He was shot at. They took him to court. Somebody tried to shoot at him again. All these different things. And then after all of that, he went to the UFC fights. It seems like if you invite him to anything, he go to it. Whereas Kamala wouldn't even go sit down with Joe Rogan. And more is coming out about that, by the way. That her team said it wasn't a good idea. Again, I don't know who these advisors were, but that was terrible. But I turned this many keys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I turned 6. And then this one is debatable. The no primary contest is debatable. So you guys can let me know, maybe you feel differently, but I don't think, again, this election was different because the incumbent dropped out. And I still find it strange that he didn't make that prediction until after Kamala Harris was named the nominee. You guys let me know. What do you think? But I see it as games. Allan Lichtman playing this game because I think he used his own bias. He probably said to himself, there is no way in hell that this country is going to elect Donald Trump again. And here we are. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.